Let us explore letting go of desire without letting go of society. This morning's lesson, oopsie, forgot the apostrophe S. Don't I feel silly? This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit, which was asked, how to not want anything yet at the same time live in society. So the individual wrote, the root of suffering is expectation. So let's start right there. Let's make it a root of suffering. Philosophically, boiling everything down to just one theme may feel like it's a convenient hook to hang your hat on. But it's inflexible, and you set yourself up to be destroyed in debate, which is no fun. So let's just say that let's pretend this. Let's look at this from the perspective of the Four Noble Truths. From a certain point of view, the first noble truth is there are stressors. Ask a biologist, they'll tell you. There are circumstantial stressors, physical stressors, interpersonal stressors, and mental stressors. We evolved the capacity to perceive stress as a survival mechanism. Now, our reactions to the stressors can mitigate the stress or exacerbate the stress. So, we are wired to desire plenty, pleasure, praise, and fame. We are wired to hate lack, I should say peril, pain, scorn, and shame. This is baked into the cake. We cannot positive think our way out of that. So yes, peril is bad. It's even worse when we desire safety. But just getting rid of our expectations, if that was even possible, would not stop stressful things from occurring. And there is an old saw that if a tree falls in the woods and there is no one to hear it, it doesn't make a sound. Yes, it does. Ask a physicist, they'll tell you. Similarly, if people say, if I have no preferences, I can't suffer. Of course you can. Your suffering may be mitigated, but you'll still suffer. So here's another thing to consider. The first of 7 enlightenment factors is mindfulness. We could repress our preferences or expectations, but that will simply multiply our stresses. The third Zen patriarch, the third Chan patriarch said, enlightenment is easy if you have no expectations, if you have no preferences. But he was speaking metaphorically. We are wired to have preferences. Let's continue. I've heard wise people saying, if you reach a state where you don't want anything to happen, where you don't want anything to happen externally, like you don't want more money, you don't want anyone to love you, you don't want anything literally, you will enjoy peace. You will just enjoy an absence of mindfulness. We are wired to desire those things. So we get ourselves in trouble when we take a literalist view of anything. All complex life forms on this planet, all animals have evolved over the millennia to think symbolically. There is no language in which there is no figurative language. Metaphors, simile, hyperbole, and the like. So when the Buddha taught that there is suffering and there's a cause of suffering, and that's desire, he was speaking metaphorically. Allow me to illustrate. The question is not, do we possess dreads and desires? The question is, are those dreads and desires a tool that helps us to navigate life? You know, for instance, desiring healthy fruit, dreading rotten fruit will help us live longer without getting, food poisoning, which I don't really care for. How about you? So the fundamental duality of dread and desire could be a tool that helps us to navigate life, or it could be a tyrant that so dominates our every perception, emotion, intention, thought, memory, and imagining that there is no room for fulfillment. There is no room for cooperation. There is no room for joy or peace or love. So what the Buddha was teaching us that when our tools become our tyrants, our stressors are exacerbated. Let's continue. But how do I live like that in society? I can control my mind to stop craving for... I can control my mind to stop craving for material things, but what about injustice? And so once again, no, you can't. You can create the illusion that you can control your mind, but you really can't. It's baked into the cake. Neuroscience has already verified this. And if you interview two different nuns or two different monks, one who's just starting off and they have maybe a year of practice under their belt, and one maybe who has 50 years of practice under the belt, someone who's really mastered the path will tell you there is nuance involved. We cannot control our mind any more than a man in the water with a hunk of wood can control the ocean. But a man in the water with a hunk of wood can surf a wave. He's not controlling the wave, he's cooperating with the wave. Similarly, we cannot control what we desire and dread, but we can observe what we desire and dread and cooperate it using the therapeutic mechanisms inherent in our autonomic nervous system. We'll get to that a bit later. The second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is right aspiration. 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness. So the great spiritual luminaries have always had room on the path for love and empathy. Anyone who tells you otherwise, in the words of Bugs Bunny, has taken a wrong turn at Albuquerque. So the question is not about repressing our desire. It's about being honest with ourselves in the present moment. So it's not about us indulging our controlling tendencies and actively discovering what it is we desire, but about us practicing in a vulnerable and spontaneous way, noticing what the present moment presents and flowing with it in the most sustainable way. What about family? What if someone does something which affects you? What if someone tries to harm me physically or mentally? Should I not react? These are all legitimate questions. So let's start with some broad brushstrokes. We've already talked about tyrant or tool, and we've talked about the figurative nature of communication. We've talked about surfing the wave rather than trying to control or command the wave. The Buddha has taught tools to help us cope with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. For instance, there are energetic strategies to help us to let go. They don't undermine our perceptions, but they help us to surf our perceptions. And we will play with that in this morning's practice in just a few minutes. There is a philosophical approach that's called the first fold of the Eightfold Path. And when we gently apply the contemplations of impermanence and interdependence to what we perceive, they can feel less defining. When we bring whatever it is we experience into the path of empathy and compassion and love, that is another wonderful tool. Remember, once again, 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path pertains to loving kindness. There are tools, I'm going to get deeper into this right now. There are anatomical tools to help us to process the present moment. So here's what doesn't work, and then I'll show you what does work. Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. If you have the misfortune of reading a book or listening to a teacher who instructs you to actively concentrate and actively meditate, to actively concentrate and actively contemplate, the only way to do that is to use such neurological structures as one's medial prefrontal cortex or one's dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is a wonderful computational device, but when we overuse it for things for which it has not evolved, we abuse it. In the short term, it causes our amygdala to light up, the seat of anxiety and aggression. In the long term, it causes us to present with symptoms of depression. So overusing or abusing our prefrontal cortex is not sustainable. Fortunately, there is a solution. Let us begin with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the center third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. Now, this is important. Most of us are familiar with the tale or the legend of the Buddha, who is also known as Gautama. But did you know that there's also a legend that the Buddha had a wicked cousin named Devadatta, who felt it would be splendid to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. The more we indulge our controlling tendencies, the more we are rigid, the less joyful and peaceful we are going to be. To the contrary, the more we walk in the Buddha's footsteps of being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, the more flexible we are, the more laid back we are, the more peaceful and fulfilled and joyful and loving we will be. And lo and behold, there's a whole part of our autonomic nervous system dedicated to being vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random, which is very beneficial. So during each inhalation, we are already wired to notice sight, sound, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, to notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. But all this could be overwhelming. This brings us to meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system, ensconced within both the lower as well as upper thirds of our same spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. And when we rely upon this autonomic nervous system, our amygdala stops lighting up, and instead this thing lights up. This thing that kind of looks like a catcher's mitt. This thing that the big kids call the anterior cingulate gyrus. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. This is why the greatest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. That centered spontaneity takes us to an additional point. How are we going to dodge the landmine of our dreads and desires in a gentle, non-controlling way, while also being able to function in society? And here's how it comes. When our choices, utterances, and deeds flow from the effortless effort, the sixth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, flow from the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, life works out well. Not always the way we hope it will or expect it will, but life works out rather well. Expectations will come. During our inhalation, we can notice them, and during our exhalation, we can release them. They'll probably come right back during the next inhalation. That's fine. Just as we do not breathe once during our life and call it quits, but go from breath to breath every moment our entire life. Similarly, we go from perception to release and back again over and over and over again. Now, what's the meaning of it all? Simply this. Due to a quirk of evolution, all the many organelles of our central nervous system are often in competition with each other. Did you know that there's a way to easily get them to cooperate? Check this out. If during our inhalation we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, our brain is going to cooperate with our sympathetic nervous system and we will perceive. If during our exhalation we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease, our brain is going to cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system and we're going to release. When we sit in meditation, we are actively cooperating with our central nervous system in a way that helps us to adjust to the ideal, to the pragmatic, to the external, to the internal, to the physical, to the mental, to the pleasurable, to the painful, to the interesting, to the boring, to the glorious, and to the grotesque. What if enlightenment was not the lobotomization of our ability to expect or desire? What if enlightenment was simply the mastery of the Buddha's Eightfold Path? As a wee child, I found the acquisition of the skill to tie my shoes to be daunting, resulting in many tears. But after great time and effort and repetition, eventually I got so good at tying my shoes that I could do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. We can also master Buddha's Eightfold Path in that way and get so good at it that we're able to apply it. Whether we're tired or alert, healthy or sick, whether we are, regardless of what we perceive, emote, intend, reason, recall, or imagine, we are still able to apply the Buddha's teachings, which include the effortless effort of centered spontaneity, which will help us to make our way through the world, which the Buddha wasn't some rigid misanthrope who alienated everyone. The Buddha or the Christ or Lao Tzu had so mastered spirituality that people We're drawn to them like moths to a porch light. We can go through life enjoying the coarse pleasures and the subtle pleasures that life has to offer us. The sound of a cat purring, the sensation of a dog licking your face, the sight of a sunrise. Life is full of so many wonderful delights that become more and more available to us the more freed we are from the tyranny of our own neurosis. What I think could be great fun is if we practiced all these vagaries right now together as a team, which we could start after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So I thought it could be great fun if we began by bringing Lama Kenyo's figurative practice of calling the teacher as from afar into energy work's path of bliss and letting go. Please chant with me. Let us invite real or imagined Guru Avalokiteshvara to the crown of our head, that in the union of bliss and letting go we may train. So we're going to take all these words and compress them into 6 syllables that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. So symbolically, the yogi represents us, and the archetype represents the teachings. And now let us practice just the way we discussed during class. One of the many benefits of this exercise is it takes the turbulent edge off of that which we can perceive. Together as a team, let us meditate as So during the opening lesson, I mentioned there was a philosophical approach we could take to the dreads and desires that seem to assail us, and that's what we've come to right now. This is known as the first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, or right view. Excuse me. So let us view letting go through a philosophical lens as we bring the illusion of horizontal duality of us and them into the dance of impermanence and interdependence known as Madhyamaka's yoga of inconceivability. And of course, I cannot use us and them without thinking about Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Please chant with me. Rather than indulge our controlling tendencies with our follies of active visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these wise words in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for statements literal, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. Together, all visible circumstances or lots could be as impermanent and interdependent as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. So let's break this down. The verb melt is a metaphor of impermanence. The verb absorb is a metaphor of interdependence. Instead of using the hard verb is, we use the soft verb phrase could be. And we use the phrase as if to infer that what we're playing with is not a literal statement but a figurative one. So we're playing with the idea that all the circumstances of all beings are melting into rainbow light that absorb into our body. Not only does this give us a visceral experience of interdependence and impermanence, but ironically uses our own self-centeredness as a tool to help us pole vault over our own self-centeredness, like fighting fire with fire. So we're taking all these words and we're squishing them down to just 6 syllables, which we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. Please remember, it's not our job to actively believe or visualize or emote. All we're doing is silently, mentally, and passively reciting these words in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. Please chant with me. All sensual bodies or forms could be as impermanent and interdependent as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this communication or speech. We're just playing with words. Always All resounding interpersonal speech could be as impermanent and interdependent as if it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this awareness or mind. All lucid minds could be as impermanent and interdependent as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into our vast empty void. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could be not graspable to the hand. And again, we return to spontaneous awareness and release as we breathe in while we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this. We can kick back and watch the antics of mind as it perceives, emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. As we exhale, while we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease, we can relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Let us review the meaning of the 6-syllable mantra. Om I invoke the wish of... Oopsie, let's try this again. Om I invoke the wish of healing Manu. This is as a metaphor of love. In the pimi lotus of purity, serving as a metaphor of release. With whom I supplicate may love and release be mastered by all. Let us bring the experience of the 4 bases of mindfulness into the conventional path of love and release, where it is love that is emphasized. May all minds of all beings now be as enlightened as the mind of a real or imagined Buddha symbolized by a tea clay. One syllable seed or bija mantra. So we're going to take all these words and squish them down into 6 syllables that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. On second thought, okay, let's play with that for a few minutes. So now what we're going to do is take these exact same 6 syllables and recite them silently and mentally and during and passively during our inhalation. During our exhalation, we're going to physically relax as best we can while striving to chant these 6 syllables 8 times per breath. Now, if this is your first time doing this, please give yourself permission to have a learning curve. Om Mani mimi yung 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 together. May all relationships or speech of all beings know be as joyfully loving as a real or imagined Buddha's communication symbolized by the 6-syllable mantra. Again, we're taking all these words and compressing them down to just 6 syllables. Whoops, what do we have here? That's weird. Oh, okay. So here are the 6 syllables that we just, that is the essence of that which we just chanted. Om mani mimi yung 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 om Om mani me me yung, 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 om mani me me yung. May all bodies or forms of all beings now enjoy the beautiful, healthy, and Buddha statuary, depicting the blissful body of a real or imagined Yadam archetype of enlightenment such as Chenrezig. Om mani me me yung, 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 om mani me me yung. May all circumstances or lots of all beings now have their good fortune or boon. As a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, Pearland or Vati. Om mani me me yung, 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 om mani me me yung. Om mani me me yung, 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 om mani me me yung. And now let us rest in awareness and letting go. Silently, mentally, and passively reciting the demonstrative pronoun this as we breathe in, thus facilitating perception. And silently, mentally, and passively reciting the one-syllable verb ease as we exhale, thus facilitating release. And as I promised during the opening lesson, we're now going to take a distinctly physiological approach. Let us view release through the physiological lens as we bring the experience of the four bases of mindfulness: the circumstantial, the physical, the interpersonal, and the mental, into the ultimate path of love and release, where it is release that is emphasized. As we inhale, we could notice all minds. 1 second. Actually, let's do it this way and see what happens. As we inhale, all circumstances or lots could appear quite vivid. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel as non-graspable or for it is a real or imagined paradise or vati of light. So we're taking all these words and we're compressing them into just 8 syllables that we are dividing between our inhalation and our exhalation, and that we are reciting silently and mentally and passively. As we inhale, all bodies or forms could feel quite sensual. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel it as non-graspable or void as a real or imagined octopoiatum of light. As we inhale, the interpersonal experience of communication or speech could sound quite resounding. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, it could feel as non-graspable or void as a real or imagined mantra of light. As we inhale, we can notice all minds, perceptions, emotions, and tensions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings quite clearly. Yet as we relax into our exhalation, they could feel as non-graspable or void as a real or imagined bija seed syllable of light. And now let us rest in spontaneous awareness and release. In our compassion may we long to free all beings from the toxic tyranny of ever. Hating, craving, and clinging, metaphorically known as the three mental poisons. In our pragmatism may our liberation of all beings be fueled by our reliance on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students, described by the metaphor of the three wish-fulfilling jewels. So, having sat for the better part of 75 minutes, you might find it refreshing to join me in 7 or so repetitions of Tibetan-style Buddha bowing, which is one of my favorite forms of calisthenics. May we free all through thee. Three jewels. 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 Let us seal this morning's practice by percussively chanting loving wishes for universal enlightenment and well-being. May all minds of all beings lucid yet void now be as enlightened as a Buddha's mind symbolized by a one-syllable bija. May all speech of all beings resounding yet void now be as loving as a Buddha's speech symbolized by a multi-syllable mantra. May all forms of all beings sensual yet void now be as healthy as a Yada mark type depicted in Buddha's statuary. May all lots of all beings appearing yet void now be as fortunate as a pure land of law depicted in Buddhist paintings. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 hours or so, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.